We really shouldn't be having a conversation of whether or not it's humane to kill somebody at the end of the day that committed a crime. We really need to talk about why we're not addressing the reasons that people get in these positions in the first place. Alabama is about to execute a man on death row with an experimental execution. They're going to use nitrogen in order to basically put a mask on this man's face, and they are going to deprive him of all oxygen. According to the American Veterinary Association, this could be distressing for certain animals. And I would like to remind everybody that humans are also animals. We are not above that. We are in the animal kingdom. And most of the information that they have that they're going off of is from industrial accidents and from suicide attempts. Now, you can gain certain information from that, but however, you don't know the ethical ramifications of such a method. So Ken Smith is a prisoner right now in Alabama. He has appealed to the Supreme Court. They refused to look at it. And he is going to be executed at 6 p.m. Central Time in Alabama. I'm just going to make this upfront. I'm against the death penalty. However, this isn't about whether or not the death penalty is right or wrong. Although that is a bigger conversation that we all should be having. And I believe it is wrong. However, we should at least have the conversation of, is this method ethical? Will this person experience pain? Now, I know some people are going to be like, well, he hurt somebody, he murdered a woman, and that's why he's on death row. Okay. But that doesn't mean that we need to turn around and execute them in an inhumane way. There are laws against torture. I know prisoners get tortured in prison. They just do. But it's not supposed to happen. You're not supposed to torture people in prison. You're not supposed to make them have an anguished death. That shouldn't happen. If you're going to have a death penalty, it should be as humane as humanly possible. And Alabama, of course, Alabama is going to say, this is the most humane form of execution. But they don't really know that because it's never been done before. It's never been used in this way, at least in the United States. I'm of the personal belief that if you spend your life in prison because you did a crime, you are serving your justice. You are serving your time. I don't think we need to kill people to justice to be served. And the reason why they're doing this is because lethal injection drugs have been hard to come by. Well, lethal injection itself can be a very torturous method of execution. John Oliver did a special on it, how some of these drugs are not in date, how people that are doing this, administering it, aren't actually doctors.
Lethal injection was sold as something akin to surgery, a medical procedure in which a doctor helps a person gently go to sleep and then they just don't wake up. The problem is, as you will see tonight, however much we want that to be the case, it just isn't. And let's start with that idea that it's medical. That is more than a bit of a stretch, because lethal injections aren't performed by medical personnel for a pretty obvious reason.
Today in the United States, it violates ethical codes for physicians to be involved. So usually the people who are involved in the executions are not physicians, and they're not properly trained to do an IV insertion, much less an execution.
And there's a whole slew of bad things that happen with that, and I will link that video here if I can find it on the internet. But it's a very good watch. I would watch that. But I would argue that all forms of execution are inhumane. However, this one seems to be experimental. And I don't care what you did. We're all human. At the end of the day, we're all human. And none of us want to die. Like, most people don't want to die. Even people that committed crimes, even people that are in prison. It's in our nature. It's in our very nature to be scared of this. I don't think we should treat people like animals just because they behaved like one in the past. That's not correct. That's not right. We should be better than that. Our society, and there's an even deeper level to this, because not that long ago, kind of walking back a little bit, Not that long ago, there was a study that came out from a man, I think he was from Harvard or Stanford or one of those Ivy League colleges. Anyway, he came out with I'll try to find that, link it here, a study showing that we don't actually have free will. Now, I think the way we think of free will is that if we don't have free will, we're basically robots, but we're kind of robots, but kind of not at the same time. So the way I understand that is that it depends on the input that puts in. And if you watch true crime long enough, you see this emerging pattern. And it's amongst most criminals have a horrid upbringing. Some don't, but most do. Some were mentally injured in some way or physically injured in some way or a combination of both, and which led them down this path. So the thing is, we really shouldn't be having a conversation of whether or not it's humane to kill somebody at the end of the day that committed a crime. We really need to talk about why we're not addressing the reasons that people get in these positions in the first place. I've always suspected this for a long time, that we really don't have free will per se, but we can be influenced. So we can influence others for better or for worse. So it depends on who you're hanging out with. Depends on, who raised you. And yeah, I had a bad childhood. I grew up in an abusive household. Did I become a serial killer? No. Did I kill anybody? No. But could it have happened to me if certain things were correct? Yeah. I got lucky. Whereas some of these people don't. So let's put that aside and got free will that may or may not be actually true, which I'm leaning more towards it's not actually true. So then we have this whole argument of culpability. Like, are we culpable for our actions depending on what happened to us earlier in life? We really need to look into why criminals are created in the first place. They're humans. They're humans. They're not born criminals. You're not born bad. We're all born a blank slate. And it depends on what was put into us growing up, the input, depends on who we end up being. And we really need to do that. But we don't seem to give a fuck about children in the United States of America. We need to do better because this is a bigger issue. This isn't just about this one man getting this one experimental execution style drug or execution. This is a bigger problem. Our jails are full. There's innocent people in our jails. Why aren't we trying to figure out who is the innocent people and get them out of jail? And why do we have so many people in jail? There's a reason we have so many people in jail. It's not because we have so many bad people. It's because we have so many inequities and just lack of safety nets in this country that creates this kind of strife in a society. We really need to ask ourselves why this man is here in the first place. And I guarantee you it's not because a preacher's wife paid him $1,000 to kill his wife. I guarantee you it was everything that led up to that point was a reason he ended up taking that job in the first place.